There are successful films and there are unsuccessful films. And amongst successful films, there are two types of successful films: the ones that follow an existing ongoing trend and are successful at that, and the other, which don't follow any trend, or rather, in fact, set their own trends. Now, the film I'm going to talk about today belongs to the latter category. It was a trend setting film when it released. It released on 11th May 1973, and today marks 50 years of that release. The movie I'm going to be talking about today is none other than Prakash Mehra's smash hit, Zanjeer. Zanjeer was written by Salim Javed, and they are rightfully credited as bringing about this grand change in the scheme of things as far as Hindi popular cinema was concerned, and especially the leading man of Hindi popular cinema. Salim Javed gave birth to the angry young man, and it was through Zanjeer that we first got a glimpse of that angry young man. Lots of theories are there about how Zanjeer became such a big hit and how the role of the hero underwent this radical change. A lot of socio-political reasons are ascribed to it. India, nearly 30 years after independence, there was a lot of disenchantment, a lot of anger, a lot of frustrations amongst the people of India at the current scenario, and which is why they felt a connection with this angry young man. But when asked, both Salim Khan and Javed Akhtar have said that they just wrote a story which they thought was a good story, a good script, and they wanted a movie made out of it. It's as simple as that. Sometimes the greatest of ideas, sometimes the greatest of things, have a very simple and humble origin. Zanjeer, I think, first came to Salim Khan. Salim Saab's father was a police officer, and he had grown up listening to stories of, gallant officers and their bravery and how they served the police force selflessly. So the germ of the idea would have definitely come from him. But Salim and Javed worked together on the script of Zanjeer. And it was around 1971-72 that they showed the script to Prakash Mehra. Prakash Mehra at that point in time was making Samadhi with Dharmendra and Asha Parekh. And he loved the script and he showed it to Dharmendra, who loved it too. And they decided to make the film together. This was in 1972. However, after Samadhi got over, Dharmendra got busy with his own home production, Pratik, and asked Prakash Mehra to wait for a while, and he would finish Pratik and then work on Zanjeer. And unfortunately, Prakash Mehra couldn't wait. Zanjeer was going to be his first production. PMP, the banner of Prakash Mehra Pictures, was going to be launched with Zanjeer. And he didn't want to wait till Pratigya got over and then start the movie. He was in a hurry to start the movie. And so Dharmendra very sportingly gave up the script to Prakash Mehra and told him to go ahead with the movie. And then began Prakash Mehra's problems, who to cast in the lead roles. Salim Khan in one interview had said that they had thought of Dilip Kumar. I don't know how Dilip Saab in 72-73 would have fitted the role of a young police officer. I think his days as a leading man were over by then. So I really can't visualize Dilip Saab doing the role. Eventually he didn't. And at a later time in his career, he is supposed to have said that the three films he regretted not doing were Baiju Baura, Pyasa and Zanjeer. But all the same, I really can't visualize Dilip Saab accepting Zanjeer at that time. Anyway, Prakash Mehra and Salim Javed went to Devanand, who was a top star at that time. And Dev Saab's only condition was he wanted a couple of songs incorporated in the movie. Because that, I think, went with the image of Devanand, that swag, that debonair image that he had of a romantic hero, and he wanted songs. Devanand movies always had some very good music, so he wanted songs which neither Prakash Mehra nor Salim or Javed could see happening in this movie. Their hero was not the type who was going to sing songs around trees. So that became a no as well. And I think finally they went to Rajkumar Sahab, who had been a police officer in his real life as well. And Rajkumar Sahab also refused to do the movie. I mean, there are many tales of Rajkumar Sahab saying that he didn't want to work with Prakash Mehra because he didn't like the hair oil he used, or he made an absurd demand like the entire movie should be shot in Madras, whereas the script was firmly entrenched in Bombay as a backdrop for the movie. So there are various reasons given as to why Rajkumar Saab didn't do the movie, but the fact remains, history tells us that neither Dilip Saab nor Devanand nor Rajkumar were willing to do the movie. And Prakash Mehra was in a fix because this was his first production and he didn't know what to do. And it was then that Salim Javed suggested the name of Amitabh Bachchan. And they were in particular impressed by a scene in one of his earlier movies, Bombay to Goa, where he was chewing gum during an action scene. And they liked that coolness and that swag that Amitabh had in that scene in Bombay to Goa. And they showed the movie to Prakash Mehra. And that's how Amitabh Bachchan was signed for Zanjeer at a princely sum of 60,000 rupees. The rest of the cast was more or less fixed. I think one of the first people to be signed for Zanjeer was Pran Sahab in that unforgettable role of his as Sher Khan. Ajit too was signed as the villain, and he was to become such an iconic villain after Zanjeer. And the role of Jaya Bhaduri was initially to be done by Mumtaz. In fact, when Dharmendra was the hero of Zanjeer, Prakash Mehra had announced the film with Dharmendra and Mumtaz in the lead roles. But unfortunately, after Dharamji walked out, Mumtaz too walked out because of her impending marriage. And hence, the only one to do the heroine's role was Jaya Bhaduri, who was courting Amitabh Bachchan at that time. So that was one of her biggest reasons for doing the movie. A very, very minuscule role actually. And a lot of persuasion from Salim Javed to do the role, which he eventually did. When Zanjeer released, I think, it caught people by surprise and shock because it was the age of romance, it was the age of Rajesh Khanna, and romantic musicals were the order of the day in Hindi cinema. And to break away from that mold and come up with a hero who never smiles. I think the only time Amitabh Bachchan smiled in Zanjeer was during the song Yari Hai Iman, where Pran pulls him up to dance and he breaks into a shy smile. Otherwise, throughout the movie, there is not a single scene where Amitabh Bachchan is smiling. So the hero, the concept, the story was completely new for Hindi cinema. They had never seen anything like that before. And it took the audience by surprise. In fact, I was reading this book on Salim Javed, which spoke about all their successful films, beginning with Zanjeer. And the book mentions that the audience reaction when that famous police station scene and Amitabh Bachchan kicks the chair before Pran could sit on it, had the audience gasping, and they were like, "Baap re baap." They'd never seen anything like that. That kind of anger, that kind of seething, brooding, tempering anger was never seen before. And here was this hero with unconventional looks, taller than usual, with a strange hairstyle, and those absolutely deep and hypnotic eyes, which conveyed so much of his hurt and his pain and his anger. So all these things were unseen before and unheard of. They could never, the audience could never associate a Hindi film hero with these qualities. So when Zanjeer came, it took most people by surprise. But I guess there was, there was this resonance because of their own lives and the own unhappy situation that most Indians found themselves in that part of the 70s. The dissolution of the dream of independence was slowly but surely setting in. So there was a lot of, the identification with the hero became very strong. It almost reflected their own anger, their own frustrations, their own inability to change the system. And here was this hero who was doing it for them. Zanjeer marked a turning point in the history of Hindi commercial cinema, and from that point in time onwards, the angry young man was to be the face of Hindi cinema. Zanjeer was, outdone by Salim Javed and Amitabh Bachchan in their later movies, Diwar and Sholay, which eventually established Amitabh Bachchan as the number one star of the country, and he would be there for, time immemorial. But the beginning of all that was Zanjeer. The beginning of that entire phase of Hindi cinema happened with Zanjeer. And, credit to be given to Prakash Mehra to make a commercial film and yet be so different from the regular commercial setup. Even the other movies of Prakash Mehra which came around that time, be it Samadhi, be it Aan Baan, and movies which came around 72, 73, they were so radically different from Zanjeer. But Prakash Mehra, working with new scriptwriters, Salim Javed, were just getting their feet into Hindi commercial cinema, and to be working with a hero who was labeled a flop hero, Amitabh Bachchan, and make this his first production. It was incredibly gutsy of Prakash Mehra. Today, 50 years later, Zanjeer at so many levels is still relevant. It doesn't look dated. The anger and the frustrations, they don't look dated. They haven't changed. And performance-wise, I think 1973 is perhaps the year of the making of Amitabh Bachchan, because he had 3 fantastic releases that year, which would establish him as an actor, as a performer, and eventually as a star. He had movies like Abhiman, Zanjeer, and Namak Haram. These 3 movies, I think, play a pivotal role in the transformation of Amitabh Bachchan from an ordinary, lanky, flop hero to a star of, the millennium eventually, and to be a superstar of Hindi cinema for at least the next couple of decades. Zanjeer was the beginning, and a very important beginning of that. Story-wise, it's the sheer genius of Salim Javed that they almost had a very similar story to Zanjeer, that of a young boy witnessing his parents' murder and as a child, and then growing up to take revenge. That's what Zanjeer was about. And Salim Javed almost replicated the same story in the same year, in 1973, and gave it to Nasir Hussain to make Yadon Ki Barat. Only this time, the hero was not on the side of the law, but on the other side of the law. Amitabh Bachchan became a cop to avenge his parents' death in Zanjeer, and Dharmendra was on the other side of the law to avenge his parents' death in Yadon Ki Barat. But that's the genius of Salim Javed, that they took a script partly inspired by Death Rides a Horse, the Hollywood movie, and also there were scenes which were earlier seen in Hindi cinema as well. In 1972, there was an obscure movie called Rani Mera Naam, directed by another cult director, K.S.R. Doss. And the beginning of Rani Mera Naam has this little girl who on a festival night witnesses the murder of her parents and the rape of her sister by 3 men. And she remembers the 3 men by distinctive features on their faces or bodies, which later on, when she grows up to take revenge, she remembers them by that. It was the same in Zanjeer, where a young Amitabh Bachchan sees the horse chain from the wrist of his parents' killers, and that's how he identifies them. So basically, the point being, Zanjeer was not terribly original as a story idea, a revenge story eventually, but it was the way the script was written, it was the way the characters were etched, and it was the way Prakash Mehra directed that script. And those smoldering performances from Amitabh Bachchan and Pran Saab especially is what makes Zanjeer so special and so memorable even today, 50 years after its release. Prakash Mehra and Amitabh Bachchan went on to do many, many successful movies together after that. You know, Hera Pheri, Muqaddar Ka Sikandar, Lawaris, Namak Halal, Sharabi. There were innumerable hits between the director-actor pair. But unfortunately, Prakash Mehra didn't work with Salim Javed again. And it was said in certain circles that Salim Javed were not very happy with some changes Prakash Mehra had made without their consent in the script of Zanjeer while shooting. I don't know how far that is true, but the fact remains that Salim Javed and Prakash Mehra didn't work together despite such a successful film. But Zanjeer is a milestone movie in the journey of Hindi popular cinema, a very important milestone, and will always remain that. And I think it's a textbook movie on how to write characters. Salim Javed were masters at that. If you see most of their characters post Zanjeer, be it Amitabh Bachchan in Diwar or in Trishul or even Dawn, and of course, iconic movies like Sholay, Kala Patthar. I can just go on and on about the kind of characters Salim Javed had written for Amitabh Bachchan. But always remember that Zanjeer was the first. And because of that reason, even 50 years after its release, it remains such a memorable and such an important film. I love Zanjeer. Let me know in the comment section what your views and thoughts of Zanjeer are. And that's all for this episode. And I'll see you the next week again. Until then, bye-bye.